Hello everybody, this is Mr. Summers and this is week one of our Raspberry Pi virtual camp. Um, so what we're going to do in this week is we're going to walk you through how to install Raspbian with Noobs on your Raspberry Pi and get it set up so that we can do the other activities both throughout the camp and hopefully as you use your Raspberry Pi going forward. Um, what you should have is a micro SD card, which is a bit small. You can see it here. Um, and I did say micro SD. And that should be of the size recommended that was in the sent out, in the system requirements that we sent out. If you have any questions about that, feel free to message me on through OutSchool, and I'll be happy to get in touch with you to walk you through that. And then I'm going to use a micro SD adapter because on the computer I'm using, there's a port for an SD card, and I will show you how to do that. If your computer has a micro SD port, then you won't have to worry about that, and we'll go from there. So the first thing you need to do is get yourself a copy of Noobs. Incidentally, this address here will be in your week one materials, so you can click on this and go along as you're going through the video. You can go through these steps yourself. So you go to projects.raspberrypi.org and projects Noobs install, and you'll see the first step is to download Noobs, which is it's an installer basically that makes it easier to get Raspbian, which is the distribution of Linux we'll be using on the Raspberry Pi, onto your Pi. So we'll go to downloads, and there we see Noobs is already highlighted. So I just clicked on that there, and then we want to download the zip file. If you already know how to use torrents, you can use the torrent file, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to use the zip file. So we go down and click on that, and it will say what do you want to do with Noobs, and go ahead and save it. And that will take a minute, so I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so now we've downloaded Noobs, or at least the zip file, which if you see my downloads window here, you can see that there it says Noobs. Right. Okay, so now the next thing that we're going to do is if you've had experience formatting SD cards, this may not be an issue for you. But if you haven't, then you should follow this step by step. All right. So the first thing to format the SD card, or more precisely the micro SD card. So just to understand what's going on here, this is the micro SD card that you were instructed to purchase for the Raspberry Pi. But many computers don't have that port, but they do have an SD port. So just to give you a contrast here, this is the size of an SD card. This is actually the adapter I'm going to use for the micro SD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my micro SD and slide it into the adapter. Okay, and for right now, I'm just going to lay this to the side because I'm not really quite ready to use it yet. All right, I'm going to go to the SD Association's website. It's a tutorial for Raspberry Pi says, and I'm going to download SD Formatter. So let me do that. And here I am at the site. So I'm using a Windows machine, so I'm going to download the version for Windows. Obviously, if you're using a Mac, then download the Mac version. Either way, you just follow the instructions. If you have any problems at all, feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to help walk you through things. I can explain things via email. I can also, if you really find yourself in a pickle, I can set up through OutSchool that has Zoom conferencing software, so I can walk you through step by step through that as well. So let me know if you need help. All right, so I'm going to click on for Windows, and then I'll get the usual, end user license agreement. You can go ahead and read that. Thankfully, I took a course in speed reading, so I'm going pretty quickly through this stuff. And I'm going to accept that. And it's going to give me this option, what do you want to do with it? I'm going to say save. And it's already down there in my download folder, which you can see if I open it up. Now you see it's next to Noobs. So minimize that. So to install that, I'm going to click on this setup installer for the SD card, the SD card formatter setup installer. And I'm going to need a wizard, like you usually find with Windows machines or computers in general. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to accept the license agreement, leaving the default destination folder is just fine, and you probably should do that. Hit next. Install. Now I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to launch the program. Do you want to allow this app? I'm going to say yes. Okay, so now I have, here's the SD card formatter. Now I'm going to take the micro SD card in the adapter I had before and put it into my SD port. Windows will get involved here. I can just dismiss that. And I'm going to give it a label. I'll call it Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to hit quick format. And I'm just going to hit format. And it will say formatting will erase all data on this card. Do you want to continue? And yes, I do. Now remember, I mentioned earlier that there will be a later tutorial or tutorial later this week that will give you some background information about terms like formatting, terms like Linux, etc., which you're going to want to watch because it's really going to help you as we go through this class or this camp. So do I want to continue? Yes, I do. And it says, successfully completed, etc., etc. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, I'm going to open back up to our tutorial now. Let me go back here a few steps. All right. So I've already formatted it. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to extract Noobs from the zip archives, the archive, excuse me. So I want to go to my download folder, right? And you see there it is. Okay, and by the way, you can see the formatted SD cards here. All right, so to keep this clean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and create, or open, I should say, a second window. And in that window, and I'm just going to make this big, so hopefully you can see it. In that window, I'm going to have the card. So you see, what I did is here, I clicked on the card so that this area here represents the storage space, or is the storage space, for the micro SD card. And then on this side, I want the Noobs things, but now it's in a zip folder, which basically means that it's been compressed so that it's a smaller download, right? So all that information, it's kind of like if you go on, a trip, or your mom goes on a trip and she's trying to pack a lot of things, your dad is, and there's a lot of clothing, and sometimes, like you really compress the clothing and you can get more into a bag. A similar thing has happened here. What the Raspberry Pi folks have done is they've taken the Noobs installer and compressed the data so that the download wouldn't be as large, so it's easier to get. But we don't want to copy the data in its compressed form. We have to unzip that. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to left click on Noobs, and I'm going to right click, because I'm kind of old school, and hit extract all. You could have gone up here, you'll see it says extract and done it that way, but it's up to you. But you want to, it's really important you extract everything. So go ahead and click Extract All, and it's going to ask you, well, where do you want to put this thing, right? So for right now, you just need to have it in a folder. So I'm just going to leave it in the downloads folder for right now because all I want to do is get it onto this this SD card. So I'm going to hit Extract. And now it's going to take a little bit, and this obviously will vary depending upon how fast your computer is. So we'll give that a second, or maybe a few seconds. Or maybe a minute. It says about 30 more seconds. That's good. Okay, so this is the extracted contents of the noobs zip folder. All right, so let's take a look back at here just to double check we're doing everything correctly. Right, so it said now open another Explorer Finder window, Finder if you were in Mac, and navigate to the SD card. That's what we did. That's here. It's best to position the two windows side by side, and that's of course what we did here. We do this. Let me put this down. Actually, we'll put this down here, so now we can see everything. All right. So we want to select all these files. Now you see there's more than this even allows. I'm going to move this down a little bit so I can make sure I'm seeing everything. And I'm just going to go and I'm using the left click button. Now, if you're left-handed and you have it set on flipped around, then it would obviously be the right would be what I'm doing on my left and vice versa. But I'm assuming that the default configurations of the mouse, I'm left clicking and holding down and covering all these files. And then I'm going to just pick it up and drag it using left click again till I go over the SD card there. And it says copy to Raspberry, and I'm going to let go there. Then we're going to get another copying message, and you can get if you're using Windows 10, you can get a sense of how long that's supposed to be by hitting details. This is about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, so I'll be right back. Okay, so now you can see, if you look back and forth, you can see here again is the SD card. Here is our original folder. And you'll see that all the same files and folders are in the two places. So let's minimize that and minimize this. And we're going to make this large again. Drag that down. Okay, so we've copied it on. And if you look at the tutorial here, by the way, if you're using a Mac, you'll see it gives you pictures on how to do it on a Mac. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and eject the SD card. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to say eject Raspberry. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to have to actually install it on the Raspberry Pi, and that will be in the next video.